Farm Food Facts, where every farmer, every acre, and every voice matters. Welcome to the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action weekly video podcast, Farm Food Facts, for August 5th, 2020. I'm your host, Phil Lempert. Today's discussion is all about the role that one of America's favorite restaurants plays in agriculture, how McDonald's works directly with farmers and ranchers to supply Americans with their favorite foods. Townsend Bailey joins us as McDonald's Director of Sustainability. With over 15,000 restaurants in the U.S. and Canada, his role is to have a positive impact on those issues that are important for people, animals, and the planet. Townsend also is responsible for driving the sustainability strategy and integration throughout the supply chain, from farm to restaurant. His responsibilities are far and wide, everything from McDonald's coffee to its beef. He's also had the enviable position of being the global lead for the Happy Meal premiums. Townsend, welcome to Farm Food Facts.
Thanks, Phil. It's great to be here.
So I guess the way I'm going to get started is, what was your favorite Happy Meal?
I mean, my favorite Happy Meal toy?
Yeah.
I've got daughters, and so one of my favorite things was to be able to bring home the complete sets for them and to watch them play and with them. And most recently, being able to bring home the whole Toy Story set and how they all fit together as a puzzle as well was a lot of fun. That's
very cool. Very cool. So let's talk about the relationship that McDonald's enjoys with farmers and ranchers. That's in your wheelhouse. Talk to us a bit about that and how it all works.
Sure. Well, Phil, McDonald's is a food company. We're a restaurant business. And so without farmers and ranchers, we don't have our customers' favorite products to serve to them. And so farmers and ranchers play a really critical role in our supply chain. One of the tricky parts about working with farmers and ranchers in our supply chain is, we're on the far end of the supply chain, and it's a very complex supply chain with many steps in between the farm and the ranch and our restaurants and our customers. And so when we think about working with farmers and ranchers, we rely a lot on multi-sectoral collaborations, like the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action, or the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, or the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium. So all these different types of collaborative spaces that enable us to connect with leading farmers and ranchers, listen to them, understand the topics that are important to them, and identify ways that we can collaborate constructively with them to build a more sustainable and resilient supply chain for our customers, and that works for all sectors of the value chain.
So clearly, for the first time in a lot of our lives, consumers walked into supermarkets, walked into some restaurants, and didn't find a lot of their favorite foods. So the supply chain became very transparent, if you would, to a lot of shoppers who had never really even thought about it before. We've also seen a lot of retailers, Publix in particular, who has reached out, and they probably never had conversations before with dairies and some of the other people that you've had this relationship with. So when we look at this pandemic and everything that's happened, your supply chain wasn't affected because you've had these relationships for years. Am I right?
Yeah, that is correct. And, from the very beginning of McDonald's company, we have, supply chain it's not just a business function. It's part of our strategic advantage. We think about it we think about the McDonald's system in terms of what we call the three-legged stool of our company, our franchisees, and our suppliers. And so supply chain has a seat at the table with our leadership, from a long time, from the beginning. And our relationships with our suppliers, we're looking at long-term strategic advantage. And in the long term, that's what positions us to withstand crises like the one we're currently going through. And it's about that long-term investment for sure, and those relationships and the strength of those relationships.
You mentioned having a conversation with these farmers and ranchers and being able to listen. What are some of the aha moments that you've had with farmers and ranchers where they brought up something that you never even thought about?
You know, I mean, gosh, Phil, there's probably too many to count. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a city, and a lot of times we talk about how many generations of America, the average American is removed from the farm. And for me, I don't even know. I have to go to my wife's side of the family, and I know that her mother grew up on a farm in North Georgia. And so it's always a bad situation when you have to lean on your mother-in-law for credentials. So learning from farmers is a daily event for me. And that's one of the things why it's so important for executives within McDonald's to get out on farms and ranches. Last May we had the opportunity to take our entire senior leadership team out and to a ranch in Texas, and so we visited the 77 ranch in Texas. It's outside of Dallas. Gary and Sue Price are part of our flagship farmer program. And we spent a day out on their ranch learning about their operations and how important it is and the types of things that they think about in management, whether it's water, resiliency, managing for droughts and floods, taking care of their animals, to make sure that we've got that they're able to continue supplying beef into the value chain as well. And that flagship farmer program is something that I'd really like to highlight too, because, we in the U.S., we have two flagship farmers right now, Gary and Sue Price, and then Lyle and Garnett Perman in South Dakota. And those two farms, ranches play a really big role for us in making sure that we've got an open conversation with them and we can listen to them. And they know that, that they can pick up the phone and call us anytime they read something in the media or have a question or something, they hear something that might be a concern for them. So we're constantly listening. Also our rules at, the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef as well, and making sure that every sector there comes to the table with equal footing. And so everything we do there is about collaboration and listening to farmers and ranchers.
So I understand that for these farmers and ranchers, McDonald's is a pretty big customer, pretty important to their business. In addition to buying product from them, what else does McDonald's do to help these farmers and ranchers?
Well, we're looking at how do we invest in research to enable farmers and ranchers to tell their story, but also looking at how do we really recognize the full value that farmers and ranchers bring to society and to the environment. So when we look at groups like the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium, that's looking at how do we value all the ecosystem services that farms and ranches provide for America, whether it's storing carbon in their soils, the importance of water infiltration and water quality, or providing habitat and biodiversity as well. So, and thinking through, are there market mechanisms that can further advance that recognition? We also work with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association as a sponsor of their Environmental Stewardship Awards program to recognize and promote leading ranchers who are great examples of what ranching can do and what food production can do to help take care of the environment as well too. And then finally, when we think about research. One of the things we've been investing in is research into grazing practices. So we have we've been investing in research with Arizona, led by Arizona State University and Peter Bick, on whether or not certain grazing practices can lead to better environmental outcomes for addressing climate change, while also providing better economic and social outcomes for farmers and ranchers too. Because one of the things we know is if a practice or principle in management doesn't lead to better economic and social outcomes for farmers and ranchers, it's not sustainable, regardless of how many great environmental outcomes. So we really have to find what's that win-win, and really understand that how practices have trade-offs and value between environment, economics, and where do they all complement each other too?
So clearly, you're doing an awful lot in partnership with farmers and ranchers. How are you, or are you even communicating these kinds of efforts to, your customers?
One of the things that's really important for McDonald's is being transparent with our customers. So we've got our mobile app, which has all sorts of information about our menu for one, but also food ingredients and nutritional information in there. Our website is kept up to date with all the information about our environmental, social, and governance work that we're doing to advance sustainability in our supply chain. One of the things that's particularly exciting for me, having worked in our coffee supply chain a bit, whenever I go in and I see a map of the countries where our coffee comes from for our McCafe and highlighting that origin. So you think there's a lot where our food comes from, how it's produced, and it's continuing to become increasingly important for our customers too. So we're really listening to our customers. We're studying our customers and trying to understand how do those messages resonate? How do we take them, from simply disclosing and putting the stories on our website and featuring them in our social media feeds to making them real whenever our customer comes into our restaurants as well. There's also a lot of messaging on packaging. We talk about, if you look on the next time you're there, if you get a filet of fish sandwich, you'll see the Marine Stewardship Council certification logo on the packaging so that customers can know right there. If you get a cup of coffee, you'll see the Forest Stewardship Council certification logo on the cup of coffee. So we're trying to find ways that we can, with the products, also provide those signals about how McDonald's cares about where our food comes from and how it's produced, and all the things that, the full value chains, farmers, ranchers, fishermen are doing throughout our entire supply chain to make sure that our food is responsibly produced.
So I don't know if you're the guy, but I guess it's 5, 6, 7 years ago when you changed the coffee to the McCafe. I actually did a segment on the Today Show, brought it on, and whoever came up with your new coffee did a fabulous job. I want to pass that on. So if it was you, thank you.
That was way before my time, but
okay. So number 2 is, I love the filet of fish sandwich. It is one of my favorites. And number 3, my first job was at McDonald's, as all your commercials always talk about, in Belleville, New Jersey. The franchisee was 21st Century Corporation. I don't know if they're still a franchisee or if they even still exist. But I was one of those people that actually put together the Big Macs when you had the little paper thing around it that you had to do it, and it was a great first job. So thank you for that, and thank you, Townsend, for all that you are doing, all that McDonald's is doing for all of our farmers and ranchers. So thanks for joining us today on Farm Food Facts.
Absolutely, thank you, Phil.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. For more information on all things food and agriculture, please visit us at usfarmersandranchers.org. Also, be sure to look for us on Facebook at US Farmers and Ranchers or on Twitter at USFRA. Until next time.